June 2008. I opened my eyes to a room full of crashing stock charts and the smell of cheap cigarettes. The Haicheng Securities Trading Center, a place I had only seen in old photographs. On the giant screen above the hall, green numbers were falling without end. All around me, people were breaking. A man squeezed his water bottle until it cracked in his fist. A woman was crying into her phone, begging someone on the other end. In the center of the hall, a man in a bright flower shirt sat on the floor, completely still. His eyes had nothing in them. This was the worst crash in the history of the Chinese stock market. The index had been above 6,000 points. Now it was falling off a cliff. At every desk, workers were picking up phones and delivering bad news. Fingers moved across calculators, adding up the damage. On every screen, the same red numbers, family savings disappearing in real time. My name is Lin Fan. 5 minutes ago, I was 32 years old. I worked as an AI architect at one of the biggest tech companies in the country. In 2024, I was rebuilding the core of our next-generation AI model. 3 nights with no sleep, screens glowing in an empty office. Then my heart gave out, and the world turned black. When I opened my eyes, I was here, 16 years in the past, standing in a trading hall full of old machines and broken people. I looked at my hands, thin, smooth, young. I walked to the glass doors and studied my own reflection. 18 years old. The summer after high school, a face I had almost forgotten. I came back, I whispered, and the words made my lips tremble. That was when my fingers brushed something cold and smooth in my pocket. It was not a Nokia. It was not a flip phone. It was my test phone from 2024, the one I carried everywhere. The screen was dead black, but the weight in my hand was real. Inside this phone was my life's work, an offline AI with a full local database. I pressed it against my chest. My heart was racing. I came back to the past, and the future came with me. I slipped behind a thick concrete pillar, away from every pair of eyes in the room. My thumb shook as I pressed the power button. The screen woke up instantly. A soft blue sphere appeared in the center. No loading, no delay. The interface was bare, just one glowing icon in the middle of the screen. I held my breath and tapped it. The system check finished in seconds, no network, but the local database was complete. Everything was still here. All the data from 2024 saved on this one device. Stock records, technical files, world events, 16 years of information at my fingertips. Charts and data filled the screen more than any computer in this building could handle. In a world where smartphones did not even exist yet, this phone was a weapon. I opened the search bar and started typing. June 12, 2008. I punched in today's date. The query sat in the search bar, ready. The AI answered before I could blink. A full stock chart loaded, every price movement from today, already recorded. The market had crashed today. Almost every stock hit its lowest allowed price. But one name stood out, Haihong Holdings. At 2:45 p.m. today, everything would change. A leaked business deal would pull big money in and the stock would shoot straight up. From the very bottom of the day to the very top. The chart showed a clean vertical line, a 20% swing in a single afternoon. I stared at those numbers. This was real. This was happening today, 20%. Right here, right now, and I was the only person alive who knew. I had 40 minutes. The clock on the main board read 2:05 p.m. Haihong Holdings was right there on the board, down 9.8%, stuck at the bottom. Sell orders were stacked deep. Nobody in this hall would touch it. Nobody except me. But there was a problem. I reached into my pocket. One wrinkled 50-yuan bill and an ID card. That was everything I owned. Even if I doubled that 50, I would have 100. That was nothing. I needed real money, someone else's money. My eyes moved across the hall, and they stopped on the man in the flower shirt, still sitting on the floor. I knew this man. In my past life, the news had told his whole story. Zhao Daohu, the biggest private trader in Haicheng. He had thrown everything into the market, his house, his car, every last coin he had. In the original timeline, he lost it all. Today, then he drank poison right outside this building, and that was the end of his story. If nobody stepped in, this man would be gone by tonight. I closed my eyes for 1 second. When I opened them, the nervousness was gone. I walked toward him, an 18-year-old body, a 32-year-old mind, and 40 minutes to rewrite everything. Daohu was still at his station, eyes fixed on the red numbers dropping across his screens. Want to make your money back? I kept my voice low and steady. To him, I was nobody, just a teenager in a dark sweater standing over a grown man. He raised his head slowly, not understanding why I was there. Then the confusion turned to anger. Get lost, he snapped. I'm busy. I didn't move. Behind him, the chart for Haihong was still falling. He looked up at me again, sharper this time, trying to read me. Your whole position is one stock, I said. Haihong Holdings, you're trapped. 800,000, all of it locked in. Am I wrong? I watched his face change. Nobody was supposed to know that number. What he didn't know was that my AI had already scanned the wrinkled trading slip in his hand. Only a small corner of the paper was visible. But the AI rebuilt the full image from that alone. I had every detail of his position before I even opened my mouth. Daohu got to his feet, eyes full of doubt. How did you know that? That part isn't important, I said, and pointed at the main board. 40 minutes until the market closes. Haihong is stuck at the daily low right now. Nobody will go near it. If you don't want tomorrow to be the same, your only way out is to listen to me. Listen to you? His face tightened. What does some kid who hasn't finished school know about stocks? Arms crossed, he stared me down, still not believing a word. I let the corner of my mouth rise just barely. Whether I know stocks doesn't matter, I said. What matters is something else. I stepped closer, dropping my voice so only he could hear. I have inside information. I leaned in close to his ear. At 2:45, big money moves in, the price will fly. I pulled back with a small smile. That was enough to get him thinking. How much cash do you have left? I asked, glancing at my phone. He was shaken. Something about me didn't match what he expected. I knew what he saw, eyes that didn't belong on a teenager's face. We sat down at his station, both of us facing the screens. 50,000, he said, voice barely there. That's the money for my daughter's school. His voice cracked on the word daughter. Fear was sitting right behind his eyes when he looked at the screen. 50,000 is enough, I said. I checked the clock. 2:10 p.m., 35 minutes left. Put all of it into Haihong at the lowest price. Do it now. Daohu shoved back from the desk. You're insane. There are tens of thousands of sell orders at the bottom, and the screen showed exactly that, nothing but red, sellers everywhere. Those are fake orders, I said, keeping my voice flat. The big players put them there to scare people while they buy quietly. I said it without any change in my face. A lie, but a necessary one. The truth was simpler. The AI had already shown me what would happen today. At 2:45, those sell orders will vanish, I told him. Buy now or miss your chance. Wait too long and the price will move without you. He was still hesitating. I needed one more push. You already lost 500,000 out of 800. What's another 50? But if I'm right, your account goes up 20% before the close. Sell tomorrow at the open, and you get back half your money. Your call. Yahoo turned and stared at the board. All he saw was green, and in this market, green meant loss. Sweat ran down his face in thick drops. I could see it in his eye, the last fight of a man with nothing left to lose. Fine, he said, turning toward the counter. If I go down, I go all the way down. He rushed to the trading desk, teeth together, fists tight. I watched him go, keeping my face steady. In my pocket, the phone glowed with a message. Trust level 85%, 34 minutes until the move. Everything was on schedule. The first real gain in this new life wouldn't be money. It would be a man who owed me one. The minutes ticked by. Around us, the whole hall was cursing at the falling market. But Dahu and I had our eyes on only one name, Haihong Holdings. We waited in the middle of the trading floor, him with his arms crossed, me with my phone in hand. 2:40 p.m. The stock still hadn't moved. Dahu had gone pale. The screen still read -9%. Haihong Holdings locked at the daily low, not a single buyer anywhere. Kid, he said through his teeth, are you playing me? This stock hasn't moved at all, he said, pushing closer. Quiet, I said, without turning my head. Just watch. 2:44 p.m. 1 minute left. Then I noticed it. The sell orders on Haihong had stopped growing. 2:45, 0 seconds. 3, 2, 1. The board lit up. Haihong Holdings plus 20%. The wall of sell orders that had been holding the stock down vanished in an instant. Across the hall, people stood up from their seats. Buy orders flooded the screen like a wave, smashing through every price level. A woman nearby froze at her monitor, mouth open. The chart line went straight up from the daily low to the daily high in seconds. The whole hall went wild. People were shouting, pointing, grabbing each other by the shoulders. On my phone, the profit number climbed past 9,000. The big board confirmed it. Haihong Holdings had hit the daily limit up. Dahu stared at his own screen, wide-eyed, not moving. The lost numbers in his account were flipping, red turning to green, one line at a time. Haihong Holdings, daily limit. The comeback was complete. On the phone, the profit passed 19,000. His 50,000 had nearly doubled. 3 minutes. From the very bottom to the very top in just 3 minutes. Dahu jumped out of his chair so fast the seat rolled into the wall behind him. Around us, other traders hit their desks, furious at themselves for not buying in time. Dahu stood in the center of the chaos, looking like a man who just woke up from a nightmare. He leaned on the counter, breathing hard, sweat dripping down his face, but behind it all pure relief. Then he spun around, searching through the crowd. The hall was packed, hundreds of people between us. I was still leaning against the pillar, watching him search. For me, this was just the beginning. Dahu found me. He came across the hall so fast he looked ready to drop to his knees. He stopped right in front of me, staring like I was something sacred. He leaned over the desk, towering above me, but his eyes told a different story, pure respect. What should I call you, he asked, sweat still running down his face. Just call me Lin Fan, I said. The 50,000 I just put in, it made 10,000, he said, barely holding it together. Plus the shares I was already holding. Today I got back over 100,000. He leaned in even closer. Master, what about tomorrow? Do I sell? Tomorrow it'll jump 5 points right at the open, I said. Sell everything. Not a single share left. He nodded fast, ready to follow every word. Around us, the trading hall buzzed with noise and red numbers. And something clicked in his head. His hand shot into his bag. He pulled out a stack of bills and held them toward me. A small thank you, master, Dahu said. Please accept it. I reached across the table and took the 2,000 without hesitating. That money was mine. I earned it. And in 2008, 2,000 was the perfect starting point. Thanks, I said. Give me your number. I might need your help with a few things soon. He agreed before I even finished the sentence. Anything you need, master. Just say the word, my life is yours. He bowed slightly and held out a business card. Defa Building Materials Trading Company. General Manager, Zhao Gang. So that was his real name. Building Materials. That detail stopped me cold. Yuchu's family factory was going to collapse because its supply chain for building materials broke apart, and now I had a direct contact in that world. I smiled. I turned and headed for the exit. Sunlight poured in the moment I pushed through the doors. 2,000 in my pocket and a plan already forming. But first, I needed to move fast before Yuchu's father lost everything. Every day counted. The clock was already running. I had to grow this money into something real before the window closed. And in 2008, opportunities were everywhere if you knew where to find them. The stock market wasn't the only way. There was one more place where my skills could make fast money. I pulled out my phone. The AI lit up on screen, ready for a command. Search something for me, I said. In 2008, right now, are there any big tech problems or rewards? The system started processing. Results came back within seconds. Tonight at 8, a famous antivirus company called Jinshan was going to face a massive attack on its servers. At the same time, a new version of the Panda virus was spreading fast through the dark web. And on a hacker forum, someone was offering 50,000 yuan to whoever could write a fix. I stopped walking. 50,000. My hand dropped to my side. A smile crept onto my face. Small reward, but good enough as a warm-up. I headed for the nearest internet cafe. The summer of 2008 pressed down on the city like a weight. The streets burned with heat, and the air itself felt restless. My shirt was soaked through by the time I reached the main road. The 2,000 in my pocket felt important, but I knew better. Compared to the empire I was planning to build, this money was nothing. Not even close. I needed much more. I flagged down a red taxi. Black Eagle Internet Cafe, I told the driver. Sufu Road. The biggest internet cafe in all of Haicheng, exactly where I needed to be. Through the window, I spotted the neon sign. This was the place. I pushed through the heavy glass door and stepped into a different world. Dark, loud, and packed with old screens. Hundreds of thick, box-shaped monitors glowed in the dim light. This was what 2008 really looked like. I walked through the smoky hall, past rows of people bent over their keyboards. Clicking keys, shouting gamers, the smell of instant noodles, it hit me from every side. I walked to the front desk. All night, I said. The girl behind the counter barely looked at me. I put a 20-yuan bill on the counter. She chewed her gum, tapped something on her own screen, and slid me a card without a word. I took the card and headed deeper inside. Past the smoke, past the noise, toward the back corner where the broken machine sat. Every screen I passed showed the same kind of thing. Shooters or fantasy games with little characters running through villages. I found my spot, a row in the far corner. Most of the machines dead, one still working. The mouse was buried under a thick layer of dust. The left button barely clicked. I pulled out a tissue and cleaned it. This would do. I sat down and put my hands on the keyboard. A greasy face popped into my view from the side, grinning way too close. I turned my head, and there he was. Dapang chewing on a sausage, round face and all. Zhu Dapang, my closest friend through all 3 years of high school. In my other life, when I had nothing left, this guy sold his car just to put money in my hand. But right now, he was just a kid, 18, headphones on, lost in some online game. He grinned at me with that baby face. No worries, no weight on his shoulders. I smiled back. Seeing him like this hit harder than I expected. His screen showed some fantasy world, villages, markets, a little character running down a dirt road. How come you're here? He asked. I thought you said you were staying home to rest these days. His hand was still on the mouse, half playing, half paying attention. He pulled his headphones down around his neck and waited for my answer. I came to do something important, I said. I kept the smile on my face but didn't explain. The memories from my other life pushed up for a moment. Him holding out those car keys, that stupid kind grin, but I shoved them back down. No time for feelings. Every second was worth money. I turned back to my screen. Lines of code filled the monitor as I opened the browser and dug deep. My fingers moved fast, typing in a dark web address that only a few people in the world would recognize. 2008 was one of the worst years for computer viruses, and that meant opportunity. The forum loaded. GeekHub. Right at the top sat the Panda virus post, and the reward was still open. The glow of the screen settled on my face. This was where the real work started. My fingers kept moving, typing line after line into the old machine. Out there in the digital world, a storm was building, a coordinated attack on the country's biggest antivirus companies. My phone from 2024 sat on the desk beside the monitor, its screen already showing a network map that no device in this era could produce. I had pulled it from my pocket just moments ago. Payload deployed. The phone was connected to this broken-down computer by a single cable, and it was already working. I reached over and tapped the dark screen. I gave the command silently in my head, transparent transfer mode, activate, take over this machine's full access. The AI connected instantly. 16 years of future technology flowing through a single cable into a 2008 computer. The phone screen gave a quiet glow. A message appeared on the display, visible only to me. Host access confirmed, scanning network. I held the phone steady in front of the keyboard and let it do its work. Then a warning popped up, red text, countdown timers, and one word across the top. Alert. High-risk worm detected. Storm 1 hidden code present. Full outbreak in 15 minutes. Storm 1. That name stopped me cold. In my previous life, this virus hit in June 2008 and destroyed everything in its path. It took down a third of every internet cafe in the country. Entire rooms of machines, all dead at once. The virus went straight for the management system, the one weak point every cafe shared. After that, it flooded every screen with pop-up ads until the machines were useless. Cafe owners lost everything overnight and most of them never reopened. I came here tonight to write code and collect a bounty. I never expected the virus to already be here, hiding inside this very network, waiting to go off. I looked at the swirling code on my monitor, and the corner of my mouth lifted. Then a shout broke out from across the hall. Blue screen. The kind every computer user fears, white text, frozen machine, nothing you can do. More voices. The whole main floor was losing it. Admin, everything's crashed. I looked up from my corner and saw it for myself. Screen after screen, all turning blue, and I watched it happen with a calm I probably shouldn't have felt. It spread through the rows like falling tiles, one machine pulling down the next. Then the blue screens turned black, and a skull appeared with red text. Want to unlock? 50 yuan per machine. Every monitor in the building showed the same skull and the same demand. A guy in a green hoodie slammed his mouse hard enough to crack the desk. The one beside him sat frozen with sweat running down his face, staring at his dead screen. The cafe owner burst out of the back room, a heavy man in a light blue shirt, glasses barely hanging on. Don't panic, he shouted, throwing his hands on the nearest keyboard. I'm restarting the server. Give me a second. He had no idea how useless that would be. The restart changed nothing. The red lock came right back. Even his billing computer was locked, his whole business, every machine, every system, completely frozen. The panic in his eyes was real now. 300 seats, full on a weekend night, and not a single machine working. He stood in the middle of the red-lit room and shouted, his voice cracking. Whoever fixes this gets free internet for a whole year. No one answered. He grabbed his phone, an old Nokia with a tiny screen. He started dialing a repair company. They told him 2 hours minimum. From my corner, I watched all of this without moving. My screen showed blue like everyone else's, but that was just a cover. Underneath, the AI still had full control. Scan the virus source, I told it. Build me a kill script, the fastest, hardest one you can make. The phone lit up. Code started filling the small screen in seconds. Command confirmed. Generating. The progress bar finished before I could blink. Lines of code scrolled down the display, dense and tight. The AI had written a weapon clean, sharp, and 10 years ahead of anything that existed in 2008. I read through it on the screen. Not a single wasted line. Dapeng sat right beside me, eyes wide. I set my hands on the keyboard. Something shifted inside me. I wasn't a teenager in a cheap internet cafe anymore. I was the man who had once stood at NASDAQ as a chief technology officer. I hit enter. The blue screen vanished, and a black command window took its place. My fingers moved across the keys, feeding the AI's code into the system line by line. The rhythm was steady, fast, controlled, exact. Every keystroke hit the old keyboard with a sharp, loud click. Dapeng leaned in. "You can write code?" he asked. He was staring so hard that the sausage fell right out of his mouth and onto his pants. I didn't answer. My eyes stayed locked on the screen. At the top of the window, the program name glowed, Killstorm. Dapeng watched the command scroll past, his mouth still hanging open. What I was really doing was translating the AI's output into code that a machine from 2008 could understand. The AI built the weapon. My job was to make it fit a world that wasn't ready for it. 5 minutes later, I typed the last character, then pressed enter hard, and Dapeng flinched beside me. A green progress bar filled the screen. Local scan complete, broadcasting patch to all machines. My machine was clean. The fix was already spreading through the network. The screen next to mine still showed the red skull, glowing in the dark. Then it blinked, and the skull was gone. The familiar Windows XP desktop loaded in its place, blue sky and green hills. One by one, every monitor in the row came back to life. A guy across the room jumped out of his chair, grinning. Third machine, fourth, fifth. The whole floor was waking up. The skulls vanished one after another, replaced by the same blue sky desktop. My screen showed the final message, network broadcast complete. All machines patched. Cheers broke out across the room. Mine's working. Mine too. People were laughing, shaking their heads in relief. Every machine in the building was back to normal, just like that. Boss Lee stood at the front desk, staring at his Nokia. The call hadn't even connected. His billing system showed a green checkmark, fully restored, as if nothing had happened. He scratched the top of his bald head. "I didn't even do anything," he muttered. He spun around, looking for an answer. "Who fixed this?" The red-haired girl behind the counter stared back at him just as confused. She pointed toward the far corner of the room. The signal came from over there. Boss Lee followed her finger and saw a teenager sitting alone in the back row, completely unbothered. I was already closing the command window with one calm click of the mouse. On my screen now was the Jinshan antivirus forum, my post already drafted, code attached, analysis included. Boss Lee started walking toward me. He was no tech expert, but even he understood what it meant when one machine heals an entire network from the inside. He moved faster, weaving through the rows toward my corner. I was uploading everything, the kill tool, the source code, the firewall patch, to a security bounty board. The upload bar sat at 62% and climbing. The post title was simple, Storm 1 Kill Tool and Code Analysis. The bounty, 50,000 yuan. Behind me, Boss Lee stood with his mouth half open, too shocked to say a single word. Dapeng stood behind me, holding his breath, completely frozen. He stared at me like I had just crawled out of a spaceship. "When did you secretly become a hacker?" he asked. I didn't answer. Boss Lee was still hovering behind me. "The forum will handle the rest," I said. Across the city, in a brightly lit office, a system was running code verification, 20% and climbing. Dozens of engineers sat at their desks, heads in their hands, losing the same fight against the same virus. An intern spotted something on a forum and called out. Someone posted a kill tool online. The forum post was already live, full download, code attached, a start button waiting. The team lead at his desk waved it off without looking. "Don't waste time on forums right now. It's probably clickbait," he said, "or a new variant of the virus itself." The tech director didn't even lift his head. His fingers moved across the keyboard like he was fighting the clock. "Boss, please," the intern said again. His voice was shaking now. The kill tool was already running on his screen, 43%. "The code is beautiful," he whispered. The tech director finally stopped typing. He pushed off from his desk and rolled his chair straight over. One look at the screen, and his eyes locked on, sharp, focused, almost scared. The code structure was clean, tight, and perfectly balanced. Every engineer in the room gathered behind him to look. It used almost no memory and ran faster than anything their team had built in a week. "Who wrote this?" the team lead said, his voice completely different now. "Must be one of the top hackers in the country. Download it, push it to every machine now." 3 minutes later, the patch was being sent to machines all across the network. Back at my screen, a private message window appeared. Jinshin Security Center, their verified account. "Friend, your code is perfect. You bought us real time." My phone buzzed. Bank notification, 50,000 yuan already in my account. The message kept going. "Want to come to Beijing? Name your salary." I smiled and typed back 2 words. "Still studying." Then I closed the window. 50,000 from the bounty, 2,000 from the stock market. My starting money was set. I stood up and unplugged my phone. I turned around. Boss Lee was at the counter, watching me like I had grown a second head. He had probably been standing there the whole time. "Any chance you could waive my internet fees?" I asked. I gave him my friendliest smile. Boss Lee nearly tripped over his own feet. "Free, all free. Come anytime. Drinks on the house too." He was rubbing his hands together, grinning. "That virus just now, how did you?" "System hole," I said. "I patched your server already. This kind of thing won't get in again." I kept my voice flat, like fixing a virus was the same as tying my shoes. Boss Lee shook his head. "If that ran all night, I'd have lost tens of thousands." "Thank you." He reached behind the counter, still beaming. A 1,000 yuan internet card appeared in his hand. I shook my head. "Keep the card. Just save the best machines for my friend Dapeng when he comes in." Behind me, Dapeng dropped to the floor and grabbed my leg like his life depended on it. "You're my real brother from now on," he said, grinning so hard his eyes disappeared. I pushed him off. He landed on the floor and just sat there, looking wounded. I checked my phone 10:30 at night. By tomorrow, every security company in the country would be looking for the person behind that post. I didn't care about the fame. I had bigger things to think about. The night air hit me cool and clean as I stepped out of the cafe. I asked the AI in my head, find Shen Yuchu's current location. The answer came in seconds. My phone lit up with the search results. Target, Shen Yuchu. Haicheng Central Hospital, Emergency Department. Father admitted, heart attack. Everything inside me went still. In my past life, it was this exact night. Thugs came to the hospital demanding money. Yuchu's father had collapsed and she was alone with no one to help. The men who showed up were not there to talk, they were there to take everything. To pay for her father's surgery, she signed a contract in her own blood. She even went to beg that rich kid, the one who would ruin her entire life. That night was the moment everything broke for her and for me. Not this time. I stopped a taxi and threw myself into the back seat. The driver glanced at me through the mirror. Central Hospital, I said. Fast as you can. Faster. I'll pay double. The taxi shot forward, tires ripping through the wet road. I gripped the phone in my pocket. The 50,000 yuan sitting in that account was not just money, it was the first real weapon I had in this second life. Through the rain and the wipers, the red hospital cross appeared in the dark. I threw money at the driver and ran straight into the storm. Cold rain hit my face, and for 1 second my head went perfectly clear. I pushed through the glass doors, soaking wet, sharper than I had been all night. The hospital lobby smelled like chemicals and damp clothes. I didn't need to ask for directions. Every turn of this place was burned into my memory. Emergency observation area, bed 302. I slowed my pace in the corridor, still dripping. The hallway stretched out ahead, full of patients and worried families. In my last life, I came too late. By the time I arrived, Yuchu was sitting alone at the end of an empty hall, a blood-stained death note in her lap, her eyes already dead. That memory pushed me forward. I turned the corner. Same hallway, same night, but this time I was not too late. 5 or 6 men in black tank tops had her surrounded outside the emergency room. The one in front was bald, built heavy, with tattoos covering both arms. A thick gold chain hung from his neck, and his face said he was done being patient. I stopped at the edge of the wall and watched. Your old man's finished, the bald one said. Hand over the factory that covers the debt. Sign the paper, now. Sign, and we'll cover the surgery. Simple deal. Otherwise, nobody walks through that door tonight. And there she was, right in the middle of all of them, Yuchu. She stood in front of the emergency room door with her arms spread wide, blocking it. Wet hair stuck to her white face. She looked like she might fall apart any second, but she bit down on her lip and held her ground, not one step back. She hadn't moved, arms wide, her whole body pressed against the hospital room door. This is a hospital, she shouted. You can't do this here. Her voice was shaking, but there was something hard underneath it. She held up her phone. 110 already dialed. The call timer running. The bald man cracked his knuckles. Called the cops, did you? Debts get paid. That's how the world works. Even the police know that. Yuchu held her ground, but he didn't care. He grinned and reached toward her. Go in there and pull the old man's oxygen line, he told his men. Then we'll see how fast she signs. A few doctors and nurses stepped forward, wanting to stop it. One look from the thugs sent them right back again. Yuchu closed her eyes. She stood there alone, and I could feel her breaking from where I watched. The bald man's hand came down toward her shoulder, and I caught his wrist before it landed. Making trouble at a hospital, I said. Not very smart. The whole corridor went silent. Yuchu's eyes flew open. I stood between them, still dripping from the rain. I kept my gaze forward, not on her, on him. I put every bit of cold I had right behind my eyes. She knew me, Lin Fan. Same school, different class. We had never spoken a single word to each other before tonight. At school, I was just the quiet one who always scored first. Our families lived a few streets apart, but our worlds never crossed. Every doctor and patient in the hall had backed away. I was the only one who stepped forward. The surprise on Wang Qiang's face lasted half a second before the anger took over. He yanked hard, trying to rip his wrist free, but my grip held. He was twice my size, and he could not shake me loose. Where did you come from, you little punk, he snarled. Just the two of us standing in the long, quiet corridor. Playing hero for some girl, he said. You want to die? He pulled back his free fist. I didn't even blink. Inside my head, the AI was already running. Face scan, full search. Everything at once. I pulled out my phone. 1 second was all I needed. The screen lit up with a match. Target Wang Qiang. His full name, his street name, his whole record, laid out in front of me. Low-level boss in a loan shark gang based right here in Haicheng. And the weakness he had been stealing from his own boss's collections to cover his gambling losses. Everything I needed found in 1 second. I let go of his wrist and gave him a light push that sent him stumbling back 2 steps. I don't want to fight, I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a tissue. I turned and held it out to Yuchu. Dry your face. You'll get sick. She took it without a word, staring at me like I had fallen out of the sky. Wang Qiang's face twisted. Nobody ignores him and gets away with it. He shouted at his men, and they came rushing down the hallway toward me. I turned back and locked my eyes on Wang Qiang. I held that stare and did not let go. Then I stepped close enough that only he could hear me. Wang Qiang, Chengnan Underground Den, Table 13. You lost 200,000 on a bad hand. That was company money. His foot froze mid-step, nailed to the floor. He stared at me like he had just seen a ghost. I held his gaze and let the silence do the work. What did you just say? He stammered. I let the corner of my mouth lift, just barely. And I kept going, quiet, fast, right into his ear. I put my hand on his shoulder like we were old friends. If Brother Long finds out you took those interest payments and used them to fill your own hole, how long do you think you keep that hand? Cold sweat ran down his forehead. His fist clenched tight at his side. He had hidden this from everyone, his crew, even his own wife. Who are you? His voice cracked like a boy's. I patted his frozen shoulder. Who I am doesn't matter. The Shen family's loan isn't due yet. You came early tonight to squeeze them for cash to cover your own mess. That sentence broke the last wall inside him. I stepped back and raised my voice so the whole hallway could hear. Still here? Should I call Brother Long and say hello? I didn't have Brother Long's number. I didn't even know what the man looked like, but a man sitting on a secret that big cannot afford to take chances. When you hold the right information, you hold everything. Wang Qiang's face went through 3 colors in 2 seconds. He was trying to decide what if this kid really has connections. He couldn't risk it. He ground his teeth until I heard them creak. Fine, he barked, pointing past me at Yuchu. This brat saved you today, but the debt stays. 3 days. If you still can't pay, I'll tear this building apart. His men turned and shuffled down the corridor with their heads low. The hallway went quiet, and my shoulders finally dropped. If Wang Qiang had been the type to pull a knife first and talk later, my only plan was to grab Yuchu and run. But the AI's data was perfect, and his own fear did the rest. I turned around to face her. She was still gripping that tissue with both hands like it was the only thing keeping her standing. Then she broke. Tears poured down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, Lin Fan." Something twisted deep in my chest. In my last life, I told myself I wasn't good enough for someone like her. When she needed me most, I disappeared. This time I was right here. "It's over now," I said, as gently as I could. The cold voice I had used on Wang Qiang was gone. I couldn't hold it up around her. "But the surgery," she said, still crying. "The doctor told me." She looked toward the sealed emergency room doors. "If they don't operate soon," her voice broke before she could finish. "How much?" I asked. 50,000, she whispered. "Just the first surgery is 50,000. She dropped her head. Tears hit the hospital floor. "We sold everything at home. Our savings are frozen." My hand found the phone in my pocket and the 50,000 yuan sitting in the account behind that screen. 50,000. My fingers closed around the phone in my pocket. Right there on the screen, 50,000 yuan, earned barely half an hour ago. If I hadn't taken that bounty tonight, I would have nothing to give her. I pulled out the phone and looked down at her. "Give me the hospital payment number." I held the phone out, waiting for her answer. "The hospital billing number," I said, "or your bank card, either one works." She looked up at me, searching my face for a reason not to trust this. "No more talking, every minute counts." Something shifted in her eyes right then. I kept my voice light. "This is a loan. After you graduate, you work for me to pay it back. Interest at the highest bank rate, and you have to cook for me." She didn't answer, just sat there looking at me like I was someone she had never met before. 10 minutes later, the hospital cashier took the card and processed the payment. "Bed 302, surgery team, go now." The staff moved fast. The surgery light came on, and the hallway went quiet again. That was when Yuchu's legs gave out, and I caught her before she fell. She leaned into me, and I could smell the rain still in her hair. She gripped my arm until her knuckles turned white. "I will pay you back, Lin Fan, I swear it." Her lips were still trembling when she finished. I looked into her eyes and gave her one slow nod. She held my gaze, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. I leaned against the wall and watched the rain slide down the window. 50,000 yuan gone before it even settled in my account. But I felt nothing close to regret. Money was just a number now, and some things no number could ever bring back. I stood alone in the empty corridor and quietly called the AI. The clock on the wall read 11:47. I held the phone close and whispered, "Make me a plan. How do I start from zero and turn it into $1 million in 3 days?" The message was already sent. I needed to erase the Shen family's debt, every last cent of it. The AI answered in seconds. "Use the gap in the ringtone billing system, combine it with the hottest SP services, expected return 2,000%. 2,000% medium risk." I could work with that. I walked down the corridor, staring out at the city beyond the glass. Behind me, Haicheng Central Hospital sat quiet under the dark sky. The rain had stopped, but I was just getting started. 2 in the morning, and I was standing at the internet cafe door. Inside, the all-night crowd was in full swing, screens glowing, keyboards rattling. A girl with wild red hair was working the counter, looking bored out of her mind. The place smelled like old noodle soup and energy drinks, same as always. "You're finally back," Dapeng called from the counter, chopsticks in one hand. He had been leaning over the bar, chatting up the cashier with some stories she clearly didn't believe. Dapeng grinned. "Boss Lee saved the VIP room for you. Real sofa, cold air, and a whole case of cola." I walked straight into the back, the so-called VIP section. A small room behind frosted glass, but it had everything I needed. 2 computers with decent power, a leather sofa, and enough cola to last a week. "Stop playing games," I said. "Time to work." I reached into the box and grabbed a cold can. The cola went down fast and pushed the exhaustion back a step. Dapeng blinked at me. "Work? At 2 in the morning?" My fingers were already moving on the keyboard. No more small jobs. He dropped onto the sofa, and the whole thing groaned under his weight. I glanced over at him, then reached into my pocket. I set the phone on the desk between us, the one from the future. "Want to make $1 million yuan in 3 days?" Dapeng choked on his cola so hard it almost came out of his nose. He coughed twice. "Are you crazy? Even robbing a bank needs a plan. $1 million in 3 days? SP business." He stopped coughing and just stared at me. Dapeng lived in internet cafes. Of course he knew what SP meant. 2008 was the wild age of mobile services. Ringtone downloads, weather texts, fortune messages, tiny services that made huge money. The two of us sat side by side in that small room, lit by nothing but our screens. My hands moved across the keyboard while I laid it all out. "The problem is, the whole business is run by dangerous middlemen. Some of them are basically gangs." Dapeng shook his head. "And the phone carriers are watching now too. The old scam codes can't get through their filters anymore," he said. I smiled. Who said anything about scamming? I powered up the second computer. My fingers settled on the keys, steady and light. "We're building something people actually want, something they'll be happy to pay for." I turned and looked straight at him. "Your cousin Erhu. He works at an SP company as a channel manager, right? And he has access to mobile billing codes." I let the grin show. Dapeng's eyes went round. "How do you know that?" I never said a word about him. I didn't explain. "Call him right now. I don't care where he is. Tell him there's a deal that will multiply his monthly numbers by 10. Dapeng couldn't decide if I was crazy or 3 steps ahead of everyone. But he pulled a beat-up Nokia from his ripped jeans and started dialing. While he argued his cousin out of bed, I was already on to the next step. I picked up the AI phone and gave it quiet orders. The screen filled with text, target platforms, Symbian S60 J2ME. Behind me, Dapang was sweating into the phone trying to make his cousin believe him. The AI kept building. Core features appeared on the screen one line at a time. Code started writing itself faster than any team of programmers could dream of. A messaging app that worked on every phone with tricks to send messages almost for free. Out in the main hall, the cafe was full of gamers who had no idea what was being born in this back room. The AI reached into its future database and rebuilt everything to fit 2008 hardware. I watched the progress and let myself smile. The phone glowed bright, holographic light rising from the screen as it ran at full power. Every line of modern code was being translated into something a cheap phone from this era could run. Light pulsed from the screen as the project neared the finish line. In 2008, Nokia owned the phone market. People were still pressing tiny keys 3 times just to type one letter, and paying for every single text. 3 platform icons appeared on the screen: S60 J2ME MTK, all green, all ready. The app was called SoulLink, a messaging tool barely 200 kilobytes, built to change everything. My fingers were a blur on the keys. The code didn't come line by line, it poured onto the screen in whole blocks.